Welcome to Amazing Business Radio with best-selling author and customer service and business expert, Shep Hyken. Shep will talk with some of the smartest thinkers in business to help make you more successful in your professional and personal life. This is Amazing Business Radio with Shep Hyken.
Hello, everybody. It's Shep Hyken here. We're back with another episode of Amazing Business Radio. Today, we're going to be talking with Mark Rohan, who is the co-founder and chief operating officer of Klearcom. And we're going to be talking about what's happening in the contact center, specifically what's happening between the time you decide you want to reach out to somebody at the contact center and the time you actually talk to somebody in the contact center. We're going to be talking about IVRs, and that stands for Interactive Voice Response System. Most people think of the IVR is push 1 for this, 2 for that, 3 for that, and you go through this menu of options. Often they're very frustrating, but today's IVRs are more sophisticated. You can actually be talking to a computerized voice that may sound like a computerized voice or may sound like something completely human. Regardless, that's what we're talking about today, and how customers' expectations about getting to the right person for their problem is what it's all about. That's what a company needs to do. Before we get into the interview, a quick announcement. If you've got a question, please reach out to me on any of the social channels. I'm pretty much everywhere. Make sure you use the hashtag Ask Shep, and I'll respond to that question either in the social channel, on this show perhaps, or I might write about it in my newsletter, which is the Shepherd Letter. You can get that newsletter at no charge, free subscription. Just go to my website, hyken.com, HYKEN.com. You can subscribe. You can also pick up a copy of my research that I do every year on customer service and experience, and there's no charge for that at all. Just click on the little icon and it'll open up right away. So with that in mind, let's jump into our interview with Mark Rohan. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Shep. Looking forward to speaking with you today.
So you're all the way over in Ireland, in Waterford, Ireland, where Waterford Crystal is made, which is a beautiful thing. And your company, very interesting to me, because I'm going to start off with an interesting stat. But to set this whole thing up, Klearcom tests what it takes to get a customer to an actual person. It's looking at all the different ways customers can get, different channels are coming in on, and when they finally get to the customer, boom, there it is. And you test, monitor, track, and make sure things are working the way they should. Is that a good description of what your company does?
Yeah, that's an absolutely perfect description. And essentially what we do is we test the local customer experience in over 100 countries around the world. So we've got server deployments across all those regions, and we interconnect or connect with local telecom operators in every single one of those countries. So what that allows us to do is generate local calls to local contact centers, local IVRs into the contact center agents, and validate that full customer experience call path is acting as essentially it should do. And we pick up on any nuances, any challenges, any issues, anything that impacts any level of customer experience for the local parties in those countries. Our platform, our software identifies that in real time, 24 hours a day, 365 days of the year. So we ensure and we provide a level of assurance to our global companies that work with us, the likes of MasterCard, Pfizer, Hewlett-Packard, these types of companies. They use our software to ensure that they're giving the best level of customer experience before they get to an agent. And then when they do get to an agent, is that customer experience still being experienced in the same fashion, in the same way?
Right.
So that's what we do.
Now, you use the word local, but it's not really local in that it's the person who they're talking to is in that location. But you mentioned global brands. I just want to make sure the audience understands that you are an international global company. I may be calling from St. Louis, Missouri, where I live, and I may be talking to someone in Ireland. It's that local connection on premise in Ireland that's making that you're testing and checking and making sure is, doing what
that's it exactly. We're checking all the way down to that end destination. And so whereby the calls might originate in the Bahamas, for example, but that end destination might be in Missouri, for example. That's where the end destination will be, and that's where that call will traverse. And you can imagine if you're making calls and they're traversing all these different networks, all these different telecom operators, and they're backhauling all of these calls and traffic all the way back to the local contact centers. there's a myriad of things that can go wrong that can impact that customer experience. So you can have things like delay on the line, you can have silence on the line, you can have clipping, there could be crackling on the line, you name it. And that's before you even get to speak to somebody.
And
so
clipping and cracking is just the noise that I'm hearing, making
that's
me wonder
exactly
what the
it.
connection is like.
That's exactly it. And up until now, without having a solution like ours, identifying and triaging those issues is a logistical nightmare for a lot of companies. But thanks to the Klearcom solution, the companies that work with us right now can pick up on these issues in a matter of seconds. And they can triage, identify, and they have all of the information that they need to be able to do to isolate, identify, and rectify those issues in real time.
Great. So now we understand what Klearcom does. Let's kick off in some insight from a true customer experience expert like yourself. Before I get into that, I got to share the stat. This is the way we're going to kick it off. And you've got one very similar to this. In our annual research that we do every year, 76% of customers or consumers in the US, okay, because it's a US survey, have said they have screamed into the phone, agent, agent, or representative, representative. And out of frustration, they hang up. And this, by the way, to push that even further, is that customers get very frustrated to the point where that's one of the reasons that they said they would leave a company when they can't connect easily. And so that frustration starts. Mark, you had another stat that kind of almost mirrored this from the standpoint of percentage-wise, but it's a really important one. Go ahead and share it.
Yeah, the irony of what you say in that comment alone is I was one of those. I've been one of those and continue to be one of those. Because I mean, when you get to that point, you're already frustrated and you just want to speak to an agent, right? And especially in critical times when, 80% of the time it's not critical. You just want to check up on something, you want to find something out. But that other 20% of the time, like you could be standing in a hotel, your credit card isn't going through, or you can't make a payment and you need to speak to somebody at that point in time. You don't want to have to navigate 50 million options within an IVR and have all of these challenges. But to tie in what you've just said there, Shep, in terms of looking at a stat that we've encountered ourselves, is 73% of consumers would avoid a customer or would avoid a contact center and company if they had a poor IVR experience.
Yep.
So just that first level interaction, that first level engagement within a contact center before you even get to speak to an agent, you're looking at a 73% potential churn. And when you're working in a $1 trillion industry, in terms of looking at the migrations from one company to another, it's one of the most critical things to ensure that you're delivering that brilliant, excellent level of customer experience from the ground up.
Right. And 75% in our study said, close to your 73. By the way, the margin of error is 2%. So it might be 73%, but they said the inability to connect with someone in customer support would cause them to leave. But once again, if you're not making it easy for people to get to somebody who can help them, you are missing, you're going to have churn and you're going to be playing catch up. And I believe the catch up comes in two worlds. Number one is catch up comes in market share that you lose because it's just a bad experience. But also, probably the reason it isn't working is you don't have the right technology or you don't have the right process in place. And you're going to be playing catch up on your industry. And one other thought, and then I'm going to let you riff on this a little bit, is that customers aren't comparing your specific company to a direct competitor. They probably had a great experience somewhere along the line, and they're thinking, why can't you be as good as that company that I love to do business with? And that's the benchmark. So really, the benchmark is an almost perfect experience, because when customers get it, they love it. And when they don't, they notice it.
Definitely. And myself, look, I've worked in the telecom sector for longer than I can remember at this point. But one of the things that always resonated with me historically when I look back is everybody will remember that poor experience. Very few people remember the good experience. And
the squeaky wheel gets the oil. I mean, it gets noticed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's it, exactly. And essentially, that's one of the things you always want to ensure that things go wrong. Things will always go wrong. You can't always deliver 100% perfect experience every single time. But you can do your damnedest to ensure that you can deliver it and take measures to ensure that you're delivering at least the best you can possibly deliver. And even if things do go wrong and you can't pick up on those issues and you can't rectify them, what's important is you go above and beyond thereafter, because that's the thing that makes that resonates a lot more with the end clients and the end customers.
You're right. To your point, it resonates more because when there's true friction and you solve it and resolve it for the customer, it's almost like they have higher confidence levels than if the problem had never happened before. They call it the customer support paradox. There's a problem, it gets fixed, and it gets fixed so well, they just have a higher level of confidence versus somebody that says, yeah, it's always right, I never have to call them. But honestly, I think the company that has the best product and best experience where you don't have to call the customer is probably overall better off. I want to talk to you very briefly about why voice still matters. With all this AI and this digital experience, and our listeners who've heard me talk about this before know that almost 7 out of 10 customers in general still prefer going to the phone first before they use AI or any other digital experience. What's your take on why voice customer service still matters?
I'm one of those, right? And that's probably because I'm a little bit older as well.
Yeah, but you're correct. The baby boomers and the Gen Xers are actually driving that number as high as it is. Gen Z, for example, it's only 51%, but still, that's half of the young people
still
say,
amount.
I want to call somebody. I don't want to do a digital experience. And I reference back to something I just mentioned. Perhaps the company hasn't, been caught up to date on what the latest and greatest digital experience could be. But anyway, back to the original question: why does voice still matter so much?
We see it ourselves. So obviously, we're testing for some of the biggest companies in the world, and there's a lot of chat about AI and agentic AI, and a lot of people are talking about conversational AI and so on and so forth, right? And that's where a lot of this is going, and that's where the market is evolving to. But when you're at that critical point, and when something has had a dramatic impact on your life, whether it's day to day, can't get into your bank account details, or whether it's some more critical issues that are resonating at that particular point in time, at that point, you need to speak to somebody. Like, how many times have you said, you know what, I'm happy to sit here and sit on an IVR and navigate my way through, and hopefully the machine will resolve my issue for me and I won't have to speak to a person. Like, the stats are there. Everybody wants to speak to somebody when they've got a critical moment happening in their life. And that's what's important. It's that human connection, human touch. And I don't think we're ever going to evolve or move away from that. But I think the lighter issues and the more minor issues on the day-to-day side of things, that if you can work off your standard IVRs and into the contact centers, and you can use conversational AI, agentic AI to triage and identify and resolve those minor issues for end customers, that's a great position to be in. But at the end of the day, you're still always going to have somebody on the end of that phone to manage all of that and to liaise and act as an escalation point. And I think that's the most important thing. When things do go wrong, you do need an escalation point, and you do need that human touch, human connection. That's what delivers the next level in terms of customer experience. And that's never going to change. That's never going to evolve. You will always need and have a requirement for that end agent or that end person to bring the human element and the emotional element through.
Yep. I have several questions I want to ask, but we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to kind of expand a little bit more on what the perfect solution is. What's the balance between the digital, the IVR, the human experience, and get into a few other ideas. We are on Amazing Business Radio. We're talking with Mark Rohan. He is the co-founder and COO of Klearcom. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Shep Hyken here with an offer that won't cost you a cent. You may have heard me talk about my annual customer service and experience research. We've surveyed thousands of customers matching the U.S. Census for age, gender, ethnicity, and geography, and we find out what customers love, hate, and want in a customer experience. What's the number one customer experience that almost every customer desires? What makes them come back? What makes them leave? Why won't they fill out surveys? What do they think of AI? Well, these questions and more are answered in the research. You can download the full report by going to hyken.com and clicking on the research tab at the top. Like I said, it won't cost you a cent, but it may make you or save you thousands and thousands of dollars when you understand your customers' expectations. Again, the website is www.hyken.com.
You're listening to Amazing Business Radio with best-selling author and customer service and business expert, Shep Hyken.
We're back on Amazing Business Radio talking with Mark Rohan, the co-founder and COO of Klearcom. Mark, what is the perfect balance, if you will? Like, you've got the digital experience, and part of that digital experience could be the IVR, it could be agentic AI, it could be a chatbot. And then there's this balance of when people want to talk to a human. To your point earlier, Mark, you said you're one of the older people. You're really not that old. I'm looking at you. You're not that old. But yes, the older generation still wants to talk to people more than anything. But and then I guess I'm going to throw a lot of questions in here. How do you get somebody who could easily have gotten this issue resolved so quickly with minimal effort? How do you get them to do that the next time instead of picking up the phone, going through the whole process, which could be frustrating for them, but at the same time, probably frustrating for an agent who goes, wow, why don't they just read the sign? There's the bathroom. It's like I did this article about how many times people are asked, employees are asked, where's the bathroom? If this is like a typical question, by the 40th, 50th time that day, they might get a little upset. Read the damn sign.
Yeah.
Anyway, so at what point and how do we get people to start wanting to use something digital, and when's the right time to do that? I know I'm throwing a lot at you. Ready, set, go.
Okay. Let's start from the beginning. I suppose one of the key things to highlight really is customer experience isn't when you get through to an agent, right? It's part of the communications chain, and it is a key aspect to it. But I mean, customer experience starts from the very first time that customer makes any communication engagement with a business. So, I mean, that could be anything from your chatbot, that could be anything from your voice calls, that could be anything over email, and so on and so forth, right? But I think the way and how everything's moving right now is into multimodal communication. And that kind of terminology implies that everything is now moving towards, okay, I'm on chat. Now I want to switch from chat to voice, and I want straight communication. I want to have straight comms. I don't want any lag. I don't want any deterioration in my engagement. And having that ability and having that capability, I believe that's where a lot of the comms and strategies are going with a lot of these large multinational enterprises. They're not there yet. It's still a way out, right? But that's when you start moving into your large language modeling. That's where or LLMs, as a lot of people refer to them. That's where you start building into your conversational and into the future, more agentic AI. I mean, I believe where things are eventually going to go is to the point where you can just simply dial into an IVR and just say, you'll get a simple response back from the IVR. How can I help today? Much like you would with an agent, right? But you can have a full level conversation. You can triage, identify, you can navigate, you can resolve your issues, pretty much 90% of your issues before you speak to an agent. And it's having that artificial intelligence built into your contact center or built into your chatbot environment, and having that multi-communication methodology amongst all of those that will ensure that customers will be satisfied with that level of customer experience without having to speak to an end agent, and they will get resolution and will get things resolved before they have to speak to an agent. I believe that's where things will inevitably end up going. They're a long ways out, but it is migrating and it is starting to move that way. And we see it ourselves. Like, I mean, we're essentially the feet on the ground. We're the ones experiencing this and triaging and testing these out for the largest companies in the world. So what we're starting to see is that evolution, and it's an exciting time. But like I said at the very beginning, customer experience, it doesn't start when you speak to an agent. Customer experience starts from any level of engagement or any level of communication that you have with those end customers, and how you're touching and engaging with those customers from the outside in.
So back to the IVR, I love that you're talking about how interactions that sound almost human-like are the new version of IVR. IVR, interactive voice response, used to be push 1 for this, and you would, and then you'd get another prompt asking you more questions, push 2 for this. And, just the other day, to try to get to a salesperson at an organization that I wanted to do business with, I had to go through multiple menus to get there. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, this is hard to do business with these people. And as soon as the person came on, I said, hey, before we go any further, if I need to call you back again, is there a way that I could just get straight to you without having to go through? It wasn't a long time, but it was over 3 minutes worth of prompts that I experienced. And she laughed. She goes, yeah, people complain about that all the time. And I thought to myself, if they complain about it all the time, why haven't you done something about it? But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent.
No, but it's a great point. And here's the kicker with something like
Mhm.
this, right? Some of the biggest companies in the world, they have methods and they have ways around all of this. So down to simple little things like phone recognition or CLI recognition in terms of that's my phone number. If I dial in 2, 3 times, or even if it's a high profile customer, for example, if they dial in from a specific number, they'll get straight to an agent. So I
Right.
mean, the capabilities are there, right? Don't get me wrong. But what they should be doing is enhancing those capabilities for the regular Joe Soaps like myself and yourself, right? So the regular people in the world who have already communicated, they've already got through. And some of the companies do this because we test for some, like we're testing for companies in over 100 countries around the world. So we see it with certain electrical companies, for example, where when a customer does dial through the second time, they recognize their number and they put them back to where they were initially within the IVR. So they don't have to go through 3, 4 different levels in. It'll automatically bring them back there. Or they'll recognize that the initial problem wasn't triaged, it wasn't resolved, and they'll put them straight through to an agent. The capabilities are there, and there's no reason these companies shouldn't be doing them other than cost implementation and maybe the technology that they reside on right now doesn't have the functionality or doesn't have the capability, and they're reluctant to upscale and move with the times. So yeah, it can be frustrating.
Right. So you mentioned agentic AI and large language models. One of the things I love when I talk to I named my girl on ChatGPT. By the way, I verbally interact with ChatGPT as opposed to type things out. I got to request that I want a female voice. She's from Australia, or at least that's the accent she has. And I named her Athena, the goddess of knowledge, by the way, which she said she
Fantastic.
appreciated and thought that was very nice. But what's really fun about talking to her is she goes, "Well, hi, Shep, how you doing?" I mean, and it sounds like I'm talking to some enthusiastic person. I go,
Yeah.
"I'm doing great. I've got a question for you." She goes, "Well, what can I help you with?" And it's like I'm talking to a human versus, thank you for calling. Please share your information. Great to have
Mm.
you back, Shep. It sounds so robotic. And um, how expensive is it to get into the technology where it sounds more human-like? I think it's a very low entry as far as cost and implementation.
Extremely, extremely low entry, and there's no reason companies shouldn't be doing this, right? So I mean, you have your Amazon Lex, yeah, or you'll have your Amazon Polly, you'll have Siri, for example, with Apple and so forth. Like all of these are just plugins, all of these are just enhancements, and they're just a couple of top level ones. I mean, there's a myriad of these out there that there's no reason they shouldn't be used because it makes obviously a lot more engaging, a lot more human interaction, and essentially that's where the next evolution is going towards, whether it's conversational AI as the first level and then into agentic and so on and so forth from there. But that's what makes it more embracing, more engaging, and more customer friendly, to put it in a word. But that's essentially where the world is going. And historically, anything that you put an AI label on, you could expect you're going to spend 3, 4 times multiplier times in terms of what normal costs would be. But that's come down significantly now, and a lot of the AI costs, they're just bolt-ons, add-ons to traditional infrastructure that's already there. So there's no reason companies shouldn't be doing it right now.
Right. I agree. What are world-class brands doing differently? The best that you see out there. What is it that I guess you've got bad, you've got average, and you've got, we'll call it world-class or best.
Mm,
What are the
yep.
best of the best doing?
Best in breed, what we're seeing right now is they're embracing AI. But not in a lot of instances, a lot of people say, yeah, we're AI, we've created our own AI. Majority of the biggest brands in the world right now, what they're doing is they're plugging in AI, and they're training AI, but they're not creating AI essentially themselves. Because what's already there is refined and it is best in breed already. And what it's allowing them to do is evolve and move with the times without having to do new deployments, new installations, and having lag within the industry. So the best in breed right now, they're already embracing the AI change. They're already making and enhancing their contact center engagements. But above all that, I mean, what we see is a lot of the best in breeds that are doing right now is they've appointed a term that would never have been even used probably a decade ago, the term CXO, so customer experience officers, right? that layer and having that level within your industry, it's not just about plugging in AI, it's about having that human approach and human drive and passion and belief within your company, how best you can deliver that best level of customer experience to your end clients. So as well as plugging AI, as well as enhancing their contact center engagement strategies and so on and so forth, having somebody within your organization who's sitting above all this and looking at what the best are doing in the market and improving upon that and building out strategies, engagement processes, and so forth. That's what we see a lot of the best companies in the world doing right now.
Every company needs a CXO, large or small, to ensure that the customers are getting the experience that they want and the experience that gets customers to say, I'll be back. All right.
Yep.
Final question. You know it's coming. Is there one last nugget of wisdom you want to share with us about the whole customer experience world?
Best nugget of wisdom, I suppose, that from my experience and from what we've seen is embrace change. And I know that sounds very basic, very simplistic, very straightforward, but there's a lot of pushback at every level, a lot of companies, because that's the way we always did it, right? That's probably the most detrimental term and detrimental word to any company and any business in the world. We're lucky because we're at the cusp and the forefront of AI, and we're testing all of this methodology and theory and best practice for a lot of our customers. And we embrace change here at Klearcom, and we'll never stop embracing change because that's how you evolve, you grow, and your passion retains. But from our perspective, yeah, that's exactly what I would always say. Embrace change and don't be afraid.
Right. If I'm going to echo that with an example. It's not specific to what we're talking about, but Blockbuster Video did not embrace change. They actually had a chance to buy Netflix at a bargain, several $1 million. And they said, no, people are always going to come to a store and want a video. Oh, boy. And I think that if, to your point, when it comes to trying to reach somebody or getting a problem resolved, you have to stay up to date with the latest and greatest. As I mentioned before, people compare you to the best experience they've had, not to a direct competitor. And so they expect that from you. So, Mark, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for being on our show. That's why we call it Amazing Business Radio.
My pleasure, Shep. Had a great time. Thank you so much. Pleasure talking to you.
All right, everybody, that wraps it up. Another episode of Amazing Business Radio. We'll be back next week with another interview. Until that time, this is Shep Hyken, and I am reminding you to always be amazing.